Thank you for watching or listening to this free podcast of the Young Turks. We want to make sure that you get some portion of the show every day, but if you want the full show, which is actually 5 segments, come become a member and support independent media as well. tytnetwork.com/join. Meanwhile, enjoy the free podcast. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Huge show ahead for you guys. I need you to buckle up. I need Trump and others to brace for impact. So a little bit later in the program, Donald Trump with his backpedal on the NRA. It's hilarious. You're gonna love it. And the Mr. Magoo controversy. Too good. Furthermore, later in the program, we're gonna try to deport Melania Trump. I'm starting that movement. She is an illegal alien. I'll explain, and I'll explain why it's relevant in today's news, okay? So I'm not playing around today. By the way, speaking of not playing around, after the Young Turks today, Rebel headquarters, where we will have a guest on who has tried to ban male masturbation. Interesting. Okay, she is a progressive, and even though she introduced that bill, you're actually gonna love her. Okay, I'll explain later. Let's go over here. Now, Alex Jones has received considerable criticism for, first of all, everything, as he should. He's a lunatic, makes a wild conspiracy theories about pig, bear, human hybrids. And on top of that, he's deeply anti-Semitic. Now, why do I say that? For a number of reasons. He has attacked George Soros over and over again with references to his background. He attacked Michael Wolff, who wrote the book about Donald Trump. They both happen to be Jewish. You'll see it in a second as well, says that Soros worked with the Nazis. It's just like, to say someone who, I don't know if you know that Soros survived the Holocaust. Like, so Alex Jones is the worst guy on earth. Anyway, we're gonna get to what happened today in a second. But in his midst of his lunatic attacks against Americans of Jewish descent, he started with Michael Wolff, this is a little while back, and just to give you some context. And he said, oh, Michael Wolff, he looks bad, and then he put up a picture of Brian Stelter and started railing on him and saying that he looks like Michael Wolff and they're all the same. Now, as it turns out, Brian Stelter is not Jewish, but of course, Alex Jones, once he gets worked out, he doesn't know. He's like, look at him. So in fact, here, let's show you the video.
But just look at Stelter again, put him on screen. I think this, all the broadcast should be is just a photo of Stelter smiling. Oh my gosh, oh, hell on earth.
Seems like a perfectly fine picture to me. Why? Michael Wolff and Brian Stelter, and look at them and hell on, why? Okay, but we're just getting warmed up. Remember this?
He wants to run your life. He wants to control every aspect of your life because he knows he is a cowardly, degenerate sack of anti-human trash. I pledge before my heavenly Father that I will resist them every way I can. These people are the literal demon spawn of the pit of hell. Look at him. And you know what? He is better than you if you keep letting him run your life. He runs your kids. He runs the schools. He runs the banks. This guy, this spirit, this smiling, leering devil that thinks you can't see what he is your enemy. Period. All the narcissistic devil-worshipping filth. I see you, enemy. I see you, enemy. 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 You are my enemy. And I swear total resistance to you with everything I've got.
So, look, it's hard not to be amused by this literal lunatic on air ranting and raving when he should be in a straitjacket. But the things he's saying are not funny. They're the most anti-Semitic things I have ever heard in American media. He ticked off almost every single trope used to attack Jews in history across the world. Anti-human trash, dehumanize them. Demon spawn, references to devil worship, filth. I mean, this is fascism 101, Nazi 101. He's controls your kids, a reference to kids, which he's gonna make worse in a second with blood libel. And he runs the banks. Brian Stelter, it works in media. Why would he run the banks? Because that is the most classic trope against Jews in history. So he's going off on Soros and Wolf and Stelter and these people, they're filth, they're trash, and he promises his heavenly Father that he's going to rout out the enemy. I've seen this movie before, except the guy had a little mustache right here when he was saying it. So now, today, he is going to defend himself, and he says, no, it's okay. I'm not anti-Semitic. Well, I am very curious to see what this defense is going to be. Buckle up.
Soros is a Nazi collaborator that helped round up thousands of his fellow Jews, and then he has groups saying, I'm a Nazi collaborator when he's a Nazi. I mean, it just shows how reprobate and bankrupt the leftists are. And Soros is a Nazi collaborator that helped round up thousands of his fellow Jews, and then he has groups saying, I'm a Nazi collaborator when he's a Nazi. I mean, it just shows how reprobate and bankrupt the leftists are. And she's my ex-wife now. And, you know, it's my new wife, her pedigree's German, 3/4 German from Omaha, and a quarter Irish, and I'm proud of that background. And the anti-Semites call her Jewish and everything else. And if she was, I'd be proud of it. But no, she's got a noble nose, but she's not Jewish. So, you know, that's what all this comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, and it just is insane.
Oh, double facepalm. Your defense of why you're not anti-Semitic is my wife has a big nose, but she's not Jewish. You just said that Jews have big noses, and it is not a defense to, like, he couldn't even say some of my best friends are Jewish. He couldn't say my wife is Jewish. He couldn't say any of that. He had no defense. He said my wife's not Jewish, but she has a big nose like the Jews. Oh my God, that's the worst defense I have ever heard in my life. But he thinks nailed it. Look, if you weren't clear about the tropes, I'm going to give you one more from the Brian Stelter rant. I mean, again, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. This guy, and by the way, if you notice in the beginning there, he called George Soros a Nazi collaborator. Of course that's not true. Of course he's not. And Soros was a kid at the time. The guy survives the Holocaust. And this clown, and I'm trying not to use worse words against him, but he has more than earned it, then turns around and calls a Holocaust survivor a Nazi collaborator. And then he says this about Stelter.
Disingenuous, fake, false, broke back, twisted, a defiler, a betrayer, a backstabber, a devil. You will pay. Yeah, you think I don't see your face, scum? You don't think I don't see you, Stelter? I see you. You understand me? I know what you think of me and my family. I see you right back. You understand that? You understand that, Stelter? Stelter, you will fall. You will not bring humanity down. God is going to destroy you. Get him off the screen. Oh, God, they're so evil. Just please, God, free us from them. They're drunk on our children's blood, for God's sake. Okay, I'm going to stop right now.
Wow. Just in case he hadn't finished a complete list of anti-Semitic tropes, broke back, that's a reference to them leading a deviant lifestyle. Again, exactly what the Germans said back in the 1930s. A defiler, a betrayer, a backstabber, classic anti-Semitic trope. God will destroy you, as they said back then as well. And then finally, he almost forgot blood libel. So they're going to drink your kid's blood. Who's they? Gee, I wonder who they is. Can't quite tell. But it's okay, because his wife has a big nose like Jews.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, The host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Look, what Hitler did obviously speaks for itself and is the worst of the worst. But if you did a Hitler speech and that speech, are you sure Hitler's was worse? Just speeches. Because I don't know that Hitler hit every single trope in a matter of 60 seconds. I don't know that he looked as crazy as that. He looked pretty crazy. And obviously he was crazy and did the worst things imaginable. But the fascists are here. And so I know we kid around about it because he's such a lunatic. But the president listens to this fascist. So it's not funny anymore. Okay. Now let's go to something. Let's go to the president. And look, I mean, pick him, right? That guy's a lunatic in a different way. This president's a lunatic in a different way. Now, this is a lighter story, but it does get to a very heavy issue, a serious issue as well. Okay, so the president is on a warpath against his own attorney general, Jeff Sessions, already maniacal, and then he's going to take it to a different level today, at least in stories that were broken today. I'm going to get to that in a second, but first let me give you some background. As you might have seen this week, Donald Trump tweeted, "Why is Attorney General Jeff Sessions asking the Inspector General to investigate potentially massive FISA abuse?" Because that's what the Inspector General, if there is abuse, is supposed to investigate. And in fact, Sessions is trying to help you investigate something that is not necessarily an actual scandal at all. And he says at the end of the tweet, "Isn't the Inspector General an Obama guy? Why not use Justice Department lawyers?" And he says in big capital letters, Trump says about Sessions, "Disgraceful. I have never seen a president call his own attorney general graceful. No one has, because it's a crazy thing to do. If you think your attorney general is disgraceful, you should fire him instead of tweeting publicly." Okay, and they asked Jeff Sessions about it. Normally he doesn't strike back, but this time he had to answer because this is so unreal, over the top. He said, "As long as I am the attorney general, I will continue to discharge my duties with integrity and honor, and this department will continue to do its work in a fair and impartial manner according to the law and the Constitution." In other words, no, I'm not going to cover for you when we're going to follow the law here. I can't believe he's got me defending Jeff Sessions, but in this contest of two loathsome people, Trump is not only worse, but Sessions is right on the law. If you think there's an abuse, you ask the Inspector General. You don't do a political hatchet job because your boss asks you to. Okay. Now, Washington Post with a news story out today. Trump has apparently told associates that he has hired the best lawyers for his entire life, but is stuck with Sessions, who is not defending him and is not sufficiently loyal. For the 18th time, can someone educate the president? The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer in the country. He is not your lawyer. He's not the president's personal lawyer. He's the chief law enforcement officer in the country. So if you have broken the law, Donald Trump, he is supposed to investigate you. In this case, he didn't. He recused himself and he let the deputy attorney general make the case, or not make the case, do the investigation or not do the investigation. He recused himself. So he's not part of this, right? But he's like, "Why did you recuse yourself? You're supposed to defend me if somebody's doing a valid investigation of me." No, he's not. He's not supposed to do that. By the way, even if you thought that, Donald Trump, you're not supposed to be so stupid as to say it publicly, because then you're admitting in front of the whole country that you are trying to obstruct justice. But it gets, both worse and funnier, I guess, in a sense. The Post continues, behind the scenes, Trump has derisively referred to Sessions as Mr. Magoo, a cartoon character who is elderly, myopic, and bumbling, according to people with whom he has spoken. He's calling his own attorney general Mr. Magoo. Imagine if Obama was making fun of Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State behind the scenes and giving her stupid nicknames. Hey, look at Daffy Duck over there. We'd be like, why, is he mentally stable? And of course, that's the point here. The president is not anywhere near mentally stable. And he is in a panic to cover up whatever he did with the Russians, because he has got to end that investigation. In fact, now the investigation, of course, is looking at why he's in a panic, why he's obstructing justice in plain view in front of all of us. So in recent months, Mueller's team has questioned witnesses in detail about Trump's private comments and state of mind in late July and early August of last year, around the time he issued a series of tweets belittling his beleaguered attorney general. These people said the thrust of the questions was to determine whether the president's goal was to oust Sessions in order to pick a replacement who would exercise control over the investigation into possible coordination between Russia and Trump associates during the 2016 election, these people said. Now, there's your obstruction of justice. Now, look, it's not easy to prove. If Mueller wants to prove that, he's going to have to show two things. One, Trump wanted Sessions to leave so he can get someone to do his political dirty work and kill the investigation. One is he wants Sessions to leave for that reason. Well, Trump has basically admitted that in public and apparently in private. So that part's easy. That part's already done. And Trump did it for Mueller. The second part is still really hard. You'd have to show specifically with intent that Trump wanted to remove Sessions so that he could end the investigation because he thinks the investigation is going to uncover something about him. Look, I don't know that Mueller can prove that, but it would have been much harder to prove if he had to prove both parts. But Trump proved the first part for him. Yeah, I definitely want to get rid of Sessions, and it's definitely about this investigation. Okay, one last thing there. At the time, the White House advisor told the Washington Post reported that Trump was stunned that Sessions had not yet quit when he was calling him weak and beleaguered. The president said that the advisor added, had been hoping the attorney general would be so embarrassed by Trump's scathing comments that he would leave. Trump in this period also ordered his then chief of staff, Reince Priebus, to get a resignation letter from Sessions. Again, if they have all of that on the record in the investigation, now they're 2/3 of the way through proving that he was trying to obstruct justice. I want Sessions to leave. I want him to leave because of the investigation. Make him resign. I don't know that there's much left there in order to prove that he's trying to get him to get out of there because he wants to end the investigation of himself, which is obviously illegal. Obviously, it's obvious to everyone except the president and, of course, ironically, his myopic followers. So, speaking of which, let's go to irony. Now let's have a little bit of fun. That's the serious part. So, if you didn't grow up watching Mr. Magoo, you might want some background on him. And this is good. The original Magoo, Washington Post reports in a different article, was rich, resentful of the youth, pro-business, and functionally blind. And there was a riff, and it was a riff on the myopic conservatism of 1950s America. That kind of sounds like the conservatism of today. So Mr. Magoo was actually a character making fun of conservatives back then. And I get that Trump's attacks against Sessions are not that complicated and they're not too cerebral and not based on necessarily the history of the actual cartoon of Mr. Magoo. It's probably more because of looks. So let's take a look here. So that's Jeff Sessions. This is Mr. Magoo. This is Jeff Sessions and Mr. Magoo. That is a rare point I will concede to Donald Trump. Okay, now, but back to the original Mr. Magoo. Here's some descriptions of him in a book about him. He was an irascible millionaire. Who does that sound like? Not Jeff Sessions, but perhaps a certain president that we know. Hold on. He had, quote, absolute self-confidence. And he wreaked havoc upon others. I'm pretty sure I know who that is. That's that guy. That also kind of fits. And finally, just a fun little fact for you guys to end the segment, having nothing to do with politics. The original voice of Mr. Magoo was Jim Backus, Thurston Howell from Gilligan's Island. Apparently he had a little niche in doing rich people's voices. So God bless Jim Backus. That was a fun part of my youth. Okay, and what's going to be really fun is seeing Donald Trump in handcuffs. Okay, we're moving forward. Now, we're going to take a little bit of a break here. When we come back, Bernie Sanders attacked by Howard Dean and the establishment. I will attack back, and that'll be fun. You're right in the middle of this podcast. We got another great segment coming up for you. If you'd like the full show, which is actually 5 segments, go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member, you support the show, you support independent media, and you get the whole 2-hour show ad-free every day. Let's go do it now. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Ana with you guys. 2 tweets for you. Chris Allen says, so speakers complain when they don't get free speech, but it's okay to stop free speech of the students. Jeremy Varner says, I was a door-to-door vacuum salesman once. No one I worked with had been paid in months because the contract said you had to hit a quota. By the time I left a month later, there had been a 70% turnover rate. This administration reminds me of those days.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds about right.
So Hope Hicks was supposed to be the person who reels Trump in.
No.
Which, by the way, like if that's reeling Trump in, I'm very curious to see what he's like when he's not. Being constrained in it.
You actually have seen in the last 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So Hope Hicks is now in essence gone.
Oh, that's true.
And he calls
Jeff
Sessions despicable, right?
And Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, well, Mr. Magoo was earlier, to be fair. It got reported now, but he said it earlier. He calls Sessions despicable and fires McMaster. Within 24 hours, already the place is devolving. And it was already not in good shape to begin with. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. All right, what's next?
All right.
Apparently Hope has left the building. Sorry.
Hope and change? Okay. A major U.S. solar company is cutting jobs following Trump's decision to impose large or high tariffs on products necessary to build solar panels here in the United States. So SunPower Corp, which is the company that I'm talking about here, was one of the nation's largest solar panel manufacturers, but now it intends to lay off about 10% of its U.S. workforce. Now, the reason why that they're doing that is because of the fact that it's incredibly expensive to import the necessary materials in order to manufacture and install these solar panels. And keep in mind, before the tariffs were announced, they were planning on expanding their U.S.-based factory. They were going to add jobs, and now they're unfortunately cutting jobs. Now, this attributed to job cuts to the 30%. They attributed the job cuts to the 30% tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on imported solar cells and panels. Chief Executive Tom Werner estimates the new tariffs will cause the company to lose $50 million in 2018 and as much as $100 million in 2019. Now, the industry currently employs more than 260,000 people, primarily in the installation business. By the way, though, those are numbers from the Department of Energy in April of 2017. So the number could have actually increased a little bit since then, but it doesn't matter. They're laying people off as a result of these tariffs.
So, first of all, some context here. They are worried that the industry as a whole is going to lose 23,000 jobs. That's a lot of jobs to lose. Now, Trump was obsessed with coal, and if you watch the Republican convention, as we were forced to do, it wasn't just Trump. Mm-hmm. One speech after another. It was literally, we talked about it during the convention, it was the number one topic at the convention. It was bizarre. It was coal, we're going to bring coal back. There's only 160,000 jobs in coal nationwide. There's 200 and 60,000 jobs in solar nationwide. 100,000 more. The solar industry is way larger than the coal industry. But A, almost no one ever talks about them. And B, now, even if you were to bring coal jobs back, which he hasn't, coal mines are closing all over the country, and I've talked about it, and some Republicans are now disillusioned. And like, oh, we thought he was going to bring it back. Why are you going out of your way to cost solar jobs? Now, you could say it's bizarre and counterproductive, but it could also be that it's not counterproductive for their interest. The fossil fuel industry supports Donald Trump and the Republican Party with a ton of donations.
Can I give you the number? Because I think it's pretty relevant. Now, this isn't necessarily donations toward Trump, but it's donations toward lawmakers who are likely to support tariffs like the one that Trump imposed. So utilities had spent $50 million between 2011 and 2016 to block clean energy in just 7 states. So that includes Alaska, California, Florida, Michigan, Ohio, Oregon, and Washington. And so luckily California was not persuaded by that money because the solar industry did expand considerably in California. But these tariffs are having an impact. And so it's not looking good for renewable energy in the U.S.
And this is not a clear-cut liberal versus conservative issue. On trade, the boundaries are blurred. So I know that some folks want more protectionism. What I always say is, well, it depends.
Yeah.
So what's in and then a free trade guys will be like, oh, if you're for free trade, you're for all these agreements. No, it depends what's in the agreement. So in this case, for the solar panel manufacturers in America, it helps them a little bit to do this tariff. But for the people putting the solar panels in, and which is the heart of the industry, which is much larger, it really hurts them. So you've actually done more damage in this case. Now, in the deals like TPP, the problem was that it hands over our sovereignty to companies. It lets them set the rules, not to the advantage of US citizens or even the citizens of the other countries that we're dealing with, but to the advantage of solely the corporations, which makes no sense. But that doesn't mean that every protectionist measure makes sense, because it certainly doesn't, and this one doesn't, and neither does the steel and aluminum tariffs he just announced today, which then immediately tanked the market.
Right, and we're going to talk about that in more detail in just a minute. But I also want to draw some attention to a woman named Debbie Dooley. Debbie Dooley is a gun-toting Trump supporter. She is as conservative as can be. However, the one thing she disagrees with Trump and conservatives on is the issue of renewable energy. In fact, she is fighting rather aggressively to support renewable energy in the United States, specifically solar energy, and she even created something known as the Green Tea Coalition. She's part of the Tea Party. Green Tea Coalition to start convincing other conservatives that renewable energy is the way to go. So I want to give her some credit for that, because even though she appears to be an anomaly at the moment, she could have some very positive impact on the conservatives when it comes to these issues.
Doubt it. Okay, I'm going to be bah humbug about it, but it's going to be a coalition of one. And what happens with conservatives is, and it's, by the way, somewhat true of progressives too, it becomes an identity thing. And I'm a conservative because that's how I grew up and that's how I hate the libs and stuff. And well, do you actually disagree with their policies? Like, for example, no, that creates jobs. I kind of agree with them.
Right.
And if I asked her about Social Security, she'd agree with us. Medicare, she'd agree with us. She'd agree with us on probably 8 out of 10 issues. But I'm a conservative. Unless it affects you. Okay, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to join our coalition. Unless it's their job on the line.
Okay, let's talk about the other tariffs.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Donald Trump just announced additional tariffs that he will use for aluminum and steel. Now, the whole point is to create tariffs that are so expensive that there will be manufacturers who produce aluminum and steel here in the United States as opposed to importing it from other countries. Now, the tariff will basically be 25% for steel, 10% for aluminum. And as soon as he announced that, the stock market did experience a little bit of a downgrade. So, for instance, the Dow dropped 500 points. The Dow Industrial Average traded 488 points lower after rising more than 100 points earlier in the day. And also the S&P 500 declined 1.6%, erasing its year-to-date gains. So the stock market immediately responded and reacted to it. Now, for those who might think that China is going to be hit the hardest by these tariffs, that is not the case. When it comes to steel, for instance, we're actually going to probably anger some of our biggest allies, Canada, Brazil, South Korea. Mexico's on that list, although I don't know if Mexico's really our biggest ally at this point.
Through no fault of their own.
Right.
Okay, so this is another complicated issue.
Yes.
So there's different ways to protect our industries, and a lot of the other countries do things that are unfair. And so whether it's China manipulating their currency, other governments propping up their companies in a way that creates so much. It's not that it creates competition that's natural. It creates unnatural competition and drives prices down until it bankrupts our companies, and then they drive the prices up. So you can take, I think, smart action on it, although it is not easy. These are nuanced issues.
Yes.
So what does Trump do instead? No nuance. Tariffs, okay? And when you do tariffs, it also drives prices up here in America. So it might have some positive ramifications for people who work in the steel industry, although I'm not positive about that either. Again, there's a lot of nuance here, but it's gonna have some negative ramifications for all the other industries which use steel and aluminum, which now all of their costs have gone up, which they will then pass on to us.
So, for instance, the car industry, the automobile industry. So Ford Motor Company noticed that its stock prices dipped considerably after this announcement, and it's because they import steel from other countries. And what do you think they're going to do? You think they're just going to absorb those costs? No, they're going to pass it down to you. So yes, I agree. It's an incredibly nuanced issue. And there is the upside of, possibly pushing for the manufacturing of products here in the United States rather than importing it. But there are also people who might lose their jobs because of this, right? If companies need to cut costs in order to absorb some of those tariffs, then they're going to do it. I mean, they're going to look after their bottom line. So we'll see how this plays out. It was just announced. And by the way, he hasn't given any real details yet. So the details are expected to be announced next week.
So when they asked him, why'd you do it? Mr. Nuance, are you ready? Buckle up. He said, because without steel and aluminum, your country's not the same. We need it. What does that mean?
Well, I think what it means is, look, there have been people in his ear about how this is a national security issue because that steel is necessary to build the weapons for our Defense Department, right? And so the people who support these high tariffs did something incredibly clever. They started running ads during the cable news shows that Trump watches. And it's been working since June. According to the New York Times, Trump has been eager to announce these types of tariffs. And on 8 separate occasions, his advisors told him, we need to think about this a little more before you do it. And finally, he became impatient and just decided today, I'm doing this.
And to be fair to Trump, he promised it during the campaign.
He did, yeah.
Right or wrong, sound policy or not, he promised it during the campaign. And so on this one, he is doing what he promised. On many of the other issues, he didn't. The carrier didn't actually keep the jobs here. So he has proposed to cut Medicare and Medicaid, which he said he wouldn't cut. I can go on and on and on. But he promised tariffs, and he's giving you tariffs. So be careful what you wish for. You just got it.
Yeah. All right, we got to do one more story before we end the show. The wife of a special forces veteran is facing deportation. Her name is Elia Crawford, and she resides in Virginia. Elia Crawford is the wife of retired Sergeant First Class Bob Crawford and could be deported if a Virginia immigration court rules against her. She fled her own home country of Honduras in 1999 following Hurricane Mitch. She married Bob Crawford in 2001 when he was still on active duty. The couple has 2 sons. Now, for vets and active military members, there is something that makes it easier for their spouses to become U.S. citizens. But since there is a deportation order in place, and since the Department of Homeland Security refuses to rescind that deportation order, they're not able to apply for the green card. This procedure is known as the parole in place that would allow for her to remain in the United States and apply for that green card. They are not allowing it. And so, unfortunately, this family could be torn apart as a result of the Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration being incredibly draconian when it comes to immigration issues.
By the way, Melania came in on a tourist visa and then worked. That is not legal. She should be deported. If they're deporting this veteran's wife, they should deport Melania Trump. Young Turks, bye-bye. Thanks for watching or listening to this free version of the Young Turks podcast. You know that the full show is at tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you get the full show ad-free. We love you for watching or listening. Either way, there's going to be a new free podcast tomorrow. You can keep on doing that. But if you want to get the full show ad-free, tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Ana, and I'll see you soon.